So once again, if you're in TV land, we're going to take about 5 minutes to review this map that was a part of the applicant's narrative.
Showed something earlier.
I've been. So it sounds to me like if ODOT,
Here's what he was referring to.
14 feet. 6. So this is the. This is where he's talking about right there. It's going to run across the
You can't see exactly where the sidewalk goes up and down, but
So he's going to lose about 6 feet. So instead of trucks coming in along and then being able to
Yeah,
turn
it was
here,
page 6.
you know,
They
and
don't always have their practice.
Oh, they don't
Makes it
have that,
kind
but he's looking
Of
at the
course.
gray notebook though.
he can't go back
I
here.
thought it was
because
in
I don't see
there.
how a truck can go back there. I have no idea what that is.
I've been there. It's just been there like that. These big trucks, that was tough.
So it's okay, a big truck. The truck just unload right out there in front.
They're brave. That sounds like they're doing it.
Yeah, that must be the way.
Okay, so we are still on the record. And we are going to go into the questions for staff portion. Any of the commissions have any follow-up questions for staff?
I do not.
Okay, not seeing any questions for staff, let's go into deliberation. Any comments? Comments, motions, discussion, proposals?
I think it's a well-thought-out plan, and my only concern would be for the pump folks, but it sounds to me like you guys are gonna get together and figure it out, so.
I would like to see in there some sort of a condition that the applicant work with ODOT to maximize, or I guess maybe minimize the driveway impact on the neighbor, on the construction of the sidewalk, that it be, and that if there's, I always hate to give vague conditions, and I don't want to do that, so I would suggest that we do something as far as some way to tell if they've been, if they've really minimized it or not, such as, assist in obtaining the graduated, I don't know the language, I was fishing for that to the applicants, but I don't think anybody was prepared to come up with language. If anybody's got ideas on how we could condition that so that it's not aspirational, so that there's something concrete that they sort of need to do. Yeah, did you have a
I was
proposal?
going to say your language, and then just demonstrate that, you have worked with ODOT. Because if they're not willing to work with us, it'll be easy for us to get a response back from them via email or something like that, that we can share with Brian, or we can include Brian in the discussions as well.
But
Yeah.
I see that as reasonable, because the end result still, it's ODOT's call either way. I mean, as long as they're working with ODOT and they can say, we have worked with ODOT, here's what they said, it's up to ODOT. There's nothing we can.
I agree with what you're saying on that, although I've worked with ODOT enough times, sometimes a no can be turned into a yes. With the right arm twisting. But I agree with what you're saying, I mean, it's maybe the best we can do. But other than that, I thought it's a good application. We didn't get any other opposing thing from anybody in the community, it's pretty public.
So is this what we would propose?
Yeah, is there a motion?
About ready to do that. I would like to propose that we approve the application for McDonald's for file number DR 14-03 /LLA 14-02. I'd like to move that we approve that.
Is there any proposed additional conditions in with your motion?
Like you, I don't know how to put it in there. I would like to make it as a condition that they minimize the impact on the pump, Mr. Yoder's property, pending ODOT approval.
How about the, let me see if I can, there hasn't been a second yet, so there's only been a motion to amend that to say that the applicant must demonstrate to staff that they've done everything allowable by ODOT to minimize the impact of the reduction of the driveway opening.
I think that sounds great, what you said.
To the planning director, you know that. So what I wrote down, based on what I said, was that the applicant will demonstrate to the planning director that they have done everything allowed by ODOT to minimize any impacts on the driveway entrance reduction to the neighboring property.
Yes.
I would second that.
Okay.
Okay.
Is there any discussion about the motion in the second? Okay, and then we'll move to the vote. All in favor of approving, DR 14-03, LLA 14-02, as amended, with the one amendment to the conditions of approval?
So before you vote on that, I had a recommendation on two possible changes to two of the existing conditions that I
Okay.
wanted to get out.
Would anyone like to table that motion?
No?
No? Yes?
Move table that, I'd like to hear what Brian.
I handed out at the dais the suggested wordings for condition number 6 as it exists today. It's not as it exists, it's an additional condition. And it's necessary because after the packet was put together, we received written notification from ODOT of their recommended conditions of approval to include. And speaking with the applicant, and they've agreed to those conditions with one modification on the very first one that ODOT has suggested in their letter to us. And so the proposed condition number 6 is written there just to say that that they're agreeing to satisfy ODOT's recommendations with clarification on the very first one that talks about the right-of-way and the paving width of the highway. And all of this was what has been discussed with ODOT, and it's just a way of clarifying how it is meeting our TSP or our Gateway Corridor Design Plan in terms of improvements for the highway. Because that's what their condition says, is that you'll follow those standards. And we're not following it to the T. and it was agreed to do that.
Give me a minute, I'm trying to read this thing. It doesn't.
Ryan, did the applicant review this prior to the meeting?
Yes, they did.
The applicant does not have any objections to this new condition?
No, actually, just like Brian said, what it allows it, what it does is sometimes the folks that we work with at ODOT up front are comfortable with everything, and then we get to the person who reviews the plans, and they interpret things differently, so it puts it very clearly in place, so that when it gets to the construction drawing review process, that they understand that it's okay. Again, that was another problem that we had in Washington County and Canyon.
Okay. And, let's see, was this your presentation, or was this part of staff's pictures? Okay. Is there any questions on this condition?
Then there was one other condition I was going to talk about, and it has, didn't mention it before, just the fact that they are keeping the existing pole sign that's out there. And so if you're okay with that, it becomes a grandfathered-in sign. I had asked to find out what its size was, but I have not gotten that information at this point. So I don't know whether it would conform if it was built today to our current pole sign standards or not. It wouldn't have to if you agreed to grandfather it in, but since they're able to actually leave it in place, since they're rebuilding and not, totally changing the entire site. I mean, part of this, the parking lot arrangement is staying as well for this site. But the other part of that was the way the condition 15 reads today. It doesn't say that they need to get sign permits, building permits, and I was going to add the wording in number 16 to substitute for 15 so that they would clearly know they still have to get building permits for the signs shown on the facade of the building.
Okay. There was a motion and a second on the first motion, which is still on the table right now. So that motion does not include these amended conditions. So we would need to do something with that.
Mr. Chair, I recommend that we adopt the proposal incorporating number 6 and number 16 as proposed.
So that would be a motion to amend
Amend the...
Mr. Savory's motion.
Exactly, yes.
Okay. To include the staff recommended conditions 6 and 16. Is there a second to Mr. Sirlett's motion?
I second that.
Okay. Is there a discussion about Mr. Sirlett's motion, which just modifies your prior motion, which was on the table? Any discussion about that? Okay, all in favor of amending the Mr. Savory's motion as explained by Mr. Sirlett to add 6 and 16, signify by saying aye. Aye. Okay, so we're back to the consideration of Mr. Savory's motion, which was to approve the permit, and now has been amended to add conditions 6 and 16 as recommended by staff. Is there any further discussion on that? Okay. All those in favor of approving the permit as has been amended with 6 and 16 and the condition that was imposed by Planning Commission, signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed? All 5 were in aye. So that was unanimous.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Commission.
Thank you.
Go Blazers.
2924.
And sir, we do need, and make sure any of your, if you provided anything, make sure it's in the public record. And we'll designate the public record for that as the staff report as well. The electronic file could be available for
Yeah, we
anybody.
didn't actually show you what's on there.
That's
but
fine. If you
these
didn't
are-
show it to us,
Those are part of the record.
if
anyway.
it crossed our eyeballs, then we need it to be in the record.
Thank you, gentlemen. Have a good day.
Thank you. Okay. Our next item of business is the continued public hearing on the text amendment to streamline, clarify, and update the development review process for industrial zone land in the Canby Pioneer Industrial Park, which is TA 1202. Since it's continued, we do not need to re-recite the public hearing format, and since there's no one here besides one of our city councilors, we will not reread that. Staff, can you give us a refreshed update on the one piece that we're missing, I believe?
Sure, okay, so we started looking at the text amendments last meeting. Again, we're requesting consideration of these amendments to extend the Type 2 process to the Pioneer Industrial Park Overlay, Industrial Overlay Zone, and also several other considerations of design and wording clarifications. They're all related to industrial zone chapters of the code. And so I think the best way to look at them is to quickly go through them one by one, or if you've already studied them and just have questions, or however the commission would prefer to proceed.
Does anybody want to go through them one-on-one? If I don't hear anybody that wants to go through them one by one, we'll just go through them. The quick recap summary, skip the one
Okay.
by one.
And then just, I guess I'll highlight that there are some screening requirements in there. Last meeting, it was not worded correctly, but we've had staff kind of request that we already have some landscaping screening requirements in the code, but these are more clarifications that will screen large, if it's abutting a road or a residential zone, to screen outdoor storage, large vehicle loading areas, bus areas, with landscaping, fence, or berm. So that's what several of those are. A lot of amendments to the wording. To the, in the industrial overlay zone chapter, there's a design matrix that needed a lot of work, so that's what a lot of those are. And type 2 process language added in.
And what we were missing last time, if I'm not remembering, was the answer to the question of where do appeals go, was that right? But we were missing the answer to some question last time that,
I don't remember an appeal question, but I think it was,
Side or-
yeah, we had a provision in there that said all parking should be located to the side or rear as a requirement, but that's more of an encouragement that we're keeping to encourage and not require. And then, so I don't know if there was a appeal
Oh, that's what it
question,
was.
but
It was
appeal,
parking behind. It was the parking behind.
Yeah.
yeah.
We were wondering why the code did not say that they could park behind.
Yeah, and that was just a wording mistake.
did
So
make
we fixed that,
an adjustment on these?
yes.
Okay.
So we encourage to the side or rear, but don't prohibit to the front. But if it is in the front, it's got to be screened, and kind of like Trend was. So,
Now, I did not receive, I don't know if I was on the one, but I did not receive an updated line item amendment sheet, so none of us would have any idea.
amendment sheet.
The only piece that I
You did not receive the,
We got the 2 pages,
Yeah.
the summary.
okay. Well,
Yeah, you got the electronic version of everything, I guess.
so we couldn't
So I
even
guess
go
we'll-
over them one by one if they didn't get that. So I'm sorry you didn't get that, because I think you should have.
The only piece that's here is.
I don't know if anybody had a chance to look at it online.
Nope.
So,
I looked at the old one, but
guess it's up to the commission if,
Okay.
wanna-
I would suggest that we continue this hearing until we have the code in front of us. I would want to look at it line by line to see what that recent change was.
I would agree.
Somebody wants to make a motion on that?
We'll move that we can have, continue to the next meeting, discussion of, let's see if I've got this. Bear with me a moment here. That we continue our discussion of the text amendment to streamline, clarify, and update the development review process for industrial zone land in the Canby Power Pioneer Industrial Park. Streamlining, code streamlining industrial development, TA 212-02.
Is there a second on that?
Second that.
And as far as discussion, so the public hearing will remain open, it'll be just continued to our next our next meeting, and that, well, that public hearing will just remain open until then, it'll be continued. All those in favor of that motion to continue this public hearing signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None were opposed. Okay. Do we have any new business? No other new business? Okay. We have some final decisions. Let's go
Mr.
first with consideration and potential approval of the final minutes for subdivision 1402, which was known as Dinsmore Estates Part 2, I think, or Phase 2.
and Mr. Chair, I'd like to go over a couple of things.
Okay,
that I read.
go ahead, Angie, thank you.
So we did add in that some of the findings on the first page and second page of the report of general findings from the meeting there. On the condition 1, we did remove several of the sheets, that the design sheets that the applicant submitted, because they had that, the no Larch Street connection, so they're gonna have to be redone. So several of those sheets were just removed, and then I said, you know, we're approving the tentative site plan that was at the pre-app meeting. That's in the record now, so. And then the applicant suggested a couple of wording nuances to 2, 3, and 7 that are different from the ones that are in the staff reports. They're just clarifying that not every agency, like on number 2, it said before every agency would sign the construction plans, and now it's, if applicable, in particular DEQ, they normally don't sign the construction plans, they have to approve it, but just a nuance that we're glad they pointed out, so. And then number 3, engineered plans, before it said the applicant's engineer should prepare all of these things, but he doesn't prepare the electric plan or the cable plan and et cetera, so that was worded appropriately. Condition 7 was added in because there is a new intersection, the Larch intersection, so vision clearance would be applicable there, especially with the wall and landscaping. So that's new. 9B had a couple of wording things, no substance change, but a little grammatical change. Next page, number 15. That Larch Street connection, we put in that it needs a crosswalk, not the fancy ones, but the, because that was, the fancy printed brick ones were city installed, but this is just the standard
Painted.
painted stripe, so the city can come in and put the decorative ones at a later time, but just so you know, those ones on 13th were city installed, not developer installed, so, but it's not a huge burden for them to just paint the normal crosswalk. 26, I believe was reworded slightly to say that if they do plant, the city is responsible for the trees, but if they plant other landscaping, then the homeowners association is responsible for it. The city wouldn't be maintaining their bushes and flowers or anything else they want to plant out there. We're just responsible for the trees. 26 that was in the staff report was deleted. 32, 33 were worded appropriately just to clarify how a plat is recorded at the county. We removed the pedestrian walkway conditions since those are not applicable anymore with the Larch Street connection. And we're proposing to, the applicant pointed out after the packet went out, that 39, we're proposing to delete that because the county is really finicky about putting notes on the final plats. So we have condition number 36, basically that states the same thing. We just want to state that the HOA owns and maintains the wall. So 36 states that, so we don't necessarily need that. Their CC&Rs will state it, so we don't need that on the plat necessarily. So if you do make a motion to approve this, it would be with the deletion of 39, we're proposing that you do. And the landscaping,
So the HOA would own the wall but not have an easement to it? The ground that it's on?
well, number 40 has the final plat should depict an easement for trees, landscaping, and the wall.
Oh, so you'd leave on 39, you'd leave the final plat shall depict an easement for the wall along South Street 13, just not...
Well, it's stated in 30, I mean, in 40, it would be stating that twice, but, I mean, we could word it that way, but 40 does state that the easement does also include the wall.
Okay.
And the easement should be at a sufficient width for a 4.5-foot street tree planting area. So some of that area is already in the right-of-way, but as long as there's 4.5 feet for planting trees is what that's saying there. And then 42 clarified that the street tree fee is applicable to local streets and along Southeast 13th. So, quite a few changes. Thank you.
Do you have a version that's complete with the...
Those were all the ones that I just read through are, and the only thing that would be different is to delete 39. But the ones that I went through, I was just noting that that's what was changed and is in front of you right now. So the only thing we're proposing to change that's in front of you right now is delete 39. Does that make sense?
Yes. And I would propose that, I would move, even though I don't normally make a motion on things, I would move that we approve these findings, conditions, and final order with 39 to be deleted and a clean copy that does not have the italics versions of the edits in the findings in final order. So those would also be removed. There's 3 or 4 of them. There's one on page 4, one on page 5, one on page 6. Those also be deleted from the final findings.
No second, no.
Is there any discussion about that motion? Okay. All those in favor of approving the findings, conclusion, and final order with 39 deleted and the italics portions deleted, and authorize me to sign that when staff gets it to me, signify by saying aye. Aye, and there was none opposed. Okay, can we, you guys bring that by tomorrow or something? I'll sign it.
I've got it right here tonight.
Okay.
It's a clean version to sign
He's only signing the last page. So,
Okay, the next set we had was the Emerald Garden Townhomes PUD 1401, subdivision 1401.
Mr. Chair, I would like to submit to you a change to page 174, item number 19, per your request of the last meeting.
So, can you tell me which part are you?
I'll just get it to you, easier for you to find that way. Page 174, the item.
Oh, the change of 19?
yeah, I don't
Yes.
remember which one it was, though. 19.
Okay, which,
This would be the
Okay,
new verbiage
yeah.
for 19.
okay.
So that's seen in condition 19 now.
The,
Should have
so
that
the
word.
old 19 that staff had recommended said the associated subdivision final plat shall be recorded within 1 year of approval of the tentative plat, apply for a 6-month extension of planning director. The 19 that we had written down said, and I think it is the same, the associated subdivision final plat shall be submitted to the city within 1 year of approval of the tentative plat per section 1668020 and recorded within 6 months of the city planning director signing the plat per section 1668070. Was there something that staff's proposed findings seem to reflect that accurately? Am I missing something?
There was a proposal to change the verbiage.
It's changed since the
Yeah.
staff report, and the findings that you have there is the correct one.
Yeah, do you have this one? The one that staff gave in the packet?
Probably.
If you can check that one, let me know if there's a
Okay.
difference, because the one that you hand wrote on there looks to me word for word in 19 that's on our proposed findings.
Yeah, okay. Uh-huh.
So it'd be on page, what, page?
I don't have a
So
page
they're on
number
page
on
number
that.
that one. But 19,
Yeah, I was reading the link, and I think it's right.
I'm in the wrong. What are we at here? Let's see, 14.
Go back.
Wonder if we ought to.
there you go.
There we go, okay, okay.
Okay, is there any other discussion on anything on this one?
Nope.
Okay, was there any motion on this?
I'd like to move that we make a final decision, approve the final decision of Emerald Garden Townhouses, 1401, sub 1401.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Any further discussion on that motion? If no other discussion, not seeing Mr. Sorlett having any, you find now?
Fine with
Okay.
that.
Then, all those in favor of approving the findings, conclusion, and final order of PUD 1401, subdivision 1401, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None were opposed. Do we have a fancy paper copy of that one too?
Yep.
And the third one was the, no,
McDonald's rebuild.
The third one is for McDonald's, and as we often do, we try to provide you a draft so that if you feel comfortable, you can go ahead and approve it tonight as well with the condition that you added. And as long as we get that exact wording as you indicated it, it can easily be added to it. And we have to change the footing on it so it says the right case, because it's got the wrong footing on it right now. Other than that,
Is there any proposals on that idea?
plus you need to realize that if you look at the first page of that draft, there's 2 bullets down at the bottom. That's our standard way of recognizing that there will be a finding or two that added the condition that you had tonight, and we'd fill that in. But it's just a way to facilitate and get the decision notice sent out at least 2 weeks earlier, which starts the appeal period and gives them the potential of starting construction at some point 2 weeks earlier, which they requested. And so that's the only reason it's on here. So that you realize they've been pressing all along. And I think their problem in the end will be getting a building permit through Clackamas County in the time frame that it's not realistic that they think they're going to be.
However, I'm not comfortable moving forward on voting on findings unless we know what they're going to say, and we know word for word. I mean, I'm fine when we do that with conditions, and you guys type them in later, that we've actually said the words. If we want to do that, I think we would need to add the language right now and agree, the 5 of us agree on the language that's, especially if it's going to be a finding and it's not just an imposition of a condition, which I'm fine doing. Do we have any?
I'd kind of like to read it, I mean, I'm fine with it if it's clear, but
It doesn't matter to me. I'm doing what I can to present it in the fastest manner possible, if you guys feel comfortable. If you don't, hey, that's fine. We'll come back. Maybe I should clarify. The issue is, I'd rather not come back for a special meeting on May 28th just to approve these findings. Thus, it's actually going to be 4 weeks or so. When's the following? And so that was one reason I put these on here too, is because we'd be 4 weeks or so before we were able to get the findings. Thus, you have to remember the process, then we have to send them out for the notice appeal period to start. And that had some potential of delaying them from when they really want to get started.
If we didn't have the special May 28th meeting, it would be moved to the regularly scheduled June 9th. Because Memorial Day is...
So that's the only agenda item you would have currently for the 28th meeting?
Right. Well, we'd have the continuation of the text amendment now as well, if we wanted to do that.
I'm willing to entertain a motion. I mentioned my thoughts on that, but if anybody else has any thoughts. I think what I heard staff saying is that we would need to insert into these findings our explanation of why, some findings of fact on our explanation of why we imposed the condition that we imposed on the driveway, working with ODOT on the minimum driving. We'd have to come up with language for that. The other alternative that you guys could do is we could have staff write that, but then I don't know, to me, that wouldn't, personally, I don't know if this is legally accurate or not. Personally, that wouldn't necessarily be appropriate because we wouldn't have even seen the final product.
I think we need to meet on the 28th.
You thought, Luke?
I'm good with resolving this on the 28th. That's,
Okay. Is there, So is there a motion to?
Carry this over till the 28th?
Yep.
I propose that we carry the final decision for the McDonald's rebuild, DR 1403, LLA 1402, to the May 28th meeting.
Second that.
Okay, motion to continue the consideration of the findings, conclusion and final order, DR 1403, LLA 1402, until our next meeting. There's been a motion and a second. Is there any discussion on that? I'm not seeing any. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Were you and I?
Yes, sir.
All were in favor. Let's move to the next meeting as well. Okay. Any other items of interest or reports from staff?
None that I can think of. Oh, yeah, if you want an update on, I don't remember the dates.
May 1st. May 1st.
Was it May 1st? The record was settled for the Fred Meyer fuel facility. So they're started whatever the next step in the LUBA process is now.
Finally.
Okay. We need to make sure that we are very careful about that. I've dealt with that in lots of land use proceedings, that particularly the applicants, and a month ago, those folks showed up the day of and started putting other stuff on their slideshow. They do that. We need to, if like it's a PowerPoint, we need to make sure that they submit that to you guys in advance, so that's part of the public record, so any opponents can get it, look at it, review it. The same thing with, staff reports, because I'm 99.9% sure anything we look at the day of the public hearing is supposed to be part of the public record. And if they can't submit it to you guys, then they can't put it on the screen.
The item that you were looking at, that truck turning thing, is part of the record. I just couldn't remember. It's in the DKS stuff.
We didn't get it in
That's
our packets.
And you didn't get it in your packet, and we can talk about that if you'd like, because I guess we probably won't be doing this again.
I think we do have it in our pack.
Is,
72.
what,
See, that's a big truck. They just don't show 99E on there.
It is partial.
right.
But but we didn't get their narrative. In other
Yeah,
words, we didn't get
there's
any of their
other
narrative.
things that you did not get. This particular McDonald's packet was 435 pages, and so at the last minute, because of our staff constraints and the fact that we wanted to save some trees, you got the entire packet delivered electronically, 2 weeks ago, whatever. And then trying to print them all out on Monday, we said, oh my gosh, why don't we not print out all the exhibits and such? And apparently we didn't choose which things we should have printed out, because we made the decision not to print it all out. And certainly we should have printed the narrative that the applicant submitted, but we failed to do that. So when we make that judgment call on what we're going to print or not going to print, we don't always make the right decision. And so typically, we printed everything. And then we didn't want to buy new notebooks for 435 pages.
Well, let's do this then. Let's establish so that there's no more confusion amongst planning commission members, so we all know and we've established what the protocol is for that. And it sounds like this is the way staff does it anyways. Why don't commissioners assume that, until you guys tell me if this isn't going to work, but this is my proposal, assume that what Laney sends out 2 weeks ahead of time is the full, all of the material that they have up until that date. If you want that, if it's too big to be printed out, then you can ask staff to print it out. Otherwise, your packet may or may not be abbreviated if you get a printed packet. But Laney, then, if there's anything that's submitted inside that 2-week window, it needs to be presented and brought in the packets for them, because they wouldn't know otherwise. So that would give every commissioner, they would know Does that work for you guys, Brian? Is that, so that we can have some protocol that they know they got the full packet in one of them? If they want it printed out, they can
Right,
ask.
so anything that comes in from your electronic submittal, which is a full packet, would clearly be in your hand packet. And you're still saying that we could make some discretion not to print everything?
Well, like today, it certainly wasn't. I mean,
Right.
I think what I want to have us have a policy that we know that each planning commissioner at some point in time got 100% of the material that was submitted.
Right.
So that we know if, the planning commissioners will know. For instance, I didn't look at the electronic one last month at all.
Yeah. And
So I studied the packet that I got today. And I did not know that there was stuff in the electronic packet. Because we don't have a policy on
Right.
which one is the full meal deal. And so if we establish that and everybody can know, hey, you're going to get 100% of the material this way.
Right.
If you want it printed or more, it's going to come this way. Then I thought that would be the cost savings, so that,
So we certainly understood that, but I guess we've never clearly communicated that to you. We made an assumption that you understood that you were getting everything electronically. And
Okay.
normally, you were actually getting everything printed as well, but it's gotten to be a bit much here lately.
okay. So then we'll make sure that's our sort of, that's what they're already doing. We'll just make sure everybody knows that.
Text was just a mistake, right?
Yeah.
You don't
Yeah.
have the paper business.
Sorry, John.
Not only am I in the paper business, I'm in the big binder business.
There we go.
I know it's a conflict of interest.
Okay.
I
So
got
that's
babies
sort
to
of
feed.
Be an unwritten, we'll have to remind new people, if you guys can in training, help us remember to educate new people on that sort of that's how you do it.
Can I add something?
Yeah,
Because of the size of the documents, even sending them by email, your stuff bounces back to me. But I have a solution for that. We have an FTP site where, like, I have McDonald's all downloaded to that site because that's how they send it to me. I can send you a link to that, and you can look at each of those documents separately without thumbing through your books or trying to find them in the packet online, if you want it that way.
is there anybody that has computer problems that wouldn't be able to follow links and pull things up online?
Do we have that much time?
You do. Yeah, that's fine.
I'm
That should be fine.
I'll send you guys a sample,
Okay.
and you see how it works for you.
Okay. Not any other staff items? I had two planning commission topics that I wanted to bring up for potential discussion, to see what you guys think of the ideas, if we wanted to have staff work up something on them. The first was, I noticed by, I guess, happenstance, that in our R1 zone, which is our lowest density zone, we have a minimum lot size of 7,000 square feet. It means that no lot can be smaller than 7,000 square feet. But we have a maximum lot size that no lot can be larger than 10,000 square feet. So there's very little room for wiggle room in that. And we sort of, that's the zone that would normally potentially have the largest lots in it, but it can't be larger than a 10,000 square foot lot. And that perplexed me, why we would have such a low limit on our lowest density residential zone. And I thought at least to me, it was something that I was interested in us discussing, opening up for discussion, potential, maybe modification, something like that.
Does county regulations trump if we were to go ahead and change the verbiage? Or is there linkage
Well,
between?
the county itself does not regulate land uses over us. Metro would have, not Metro, the LCDC and LUBA, not LUBA, but LCDC and DLCD, through the state laws and the goals, would potentially play into that. I mean, they definitely have some things that push for high density. But if that's our low density zone and it's high density, there might be room to work with that.
I was curious because I was looking at, I own two quarter-acre lots, which we basically use as one big lot for our residents, and we had talked to the county about merging that from two lots into one, and there was some catch-22 situations. I don't remember the exact particulars, because it's been about 2 years ago now, so that's why I was wondering if I was talking to the wrong agency. I should have been talking to the city about it instead of the county. But it seemed like talking to them, it sounded like they had jurisdiction.
I'm not sure your scenario, but, some people will certainly tell you, okay, well, if you get a subdivision come in, an owner could say, I want to buy 2 lots and locate my house such that I have a extra large lot. But like Brian talked about in his staff report on these guys' permit today, normally it's frowned upon to put a building anywhere near the boundary line of 2 different lots. You would have to then merge the 2 lots if you wanted to put the building somewhere towards the center line or over what would have been the property line, and that's difficult. I just thought it's something that maybe we could have staff give us some analysis on, and then maybe we consider whether we
I think
can and
that's a
should make
good
a
idea.
change to
It's
the.
worth a discussion.
Yeah, certainly.
Is there, so there's 3 there, you guys think it's worth a discussion?
Absolutely.
Can you guys put that on as sort of for a project, a month or 2 out, and give
Okay.
us a little options, maybe give us a scenario of the options we might do on that?
Okay.
The other one that, that had come up and it hit the press, and I thought, okay, should we or should we not consider something like this, which was the, what do you call it? The Brooks incident, I guess, with the factory down in Brooks that was incinerating the remains of babies.
Right.
And obviously, that's something that, could or should, if it was to be dealt with, be done with some zoning. I don't think we have anything like that, but is that something that we should consider having something in about the disposition of deceased human remains or something? And that's something that struck me as worth a conversation.
Well, I would think that we should have something, I agree with you, I think that we should have something that precludes, have some language that would preclude that from happening here in Canby.
Do we not already have that?
I don't know, that's why I thought with the
Funeral home
conversation.
here, do they do that already? I mean, that would be
Right,
responsible.
and you might need to have an exception for.
Right, and that's
people
what I'm
that-
saying, we need to take that into consideration. This is somebody that's doing this on a responsible basis, and we need to look at that and see if that is actually the case.
Yeah.
So, I wouldn't mind talking
So
about
what
it.
was, I have no idea what you're talking about, so what was,
In Brooks, they
Concern.
were, the news reports, and this was national news, I mean, this was on basically every news outlet in the, that you could think of. That factory with the smokestacks in Brooks was having aborted babies trucked in from Canada and incinerating them in the facility. This is,
Generating electricity.
yeah, to generate electricity. So, you can think about, amongst other body parts, I guess, of or whatever else, but, so whatever they call it, I mean, it wasn't just aborted babies. It was kind of gruesome.
It was gruesome. Read that and you go, God.
So those
What
are
was I
the 2
thinking?
things that I thought we should have a conversation about or review our code on and see if we can.
First was doing that in London to generate electricity for their hospitals.
Okay, that was the 2 items that I.
On that happy
Thanks for
note,
not
Mr.
lifting
Chair, I
up.
move that we adjourn.
Okay, there's been a motion to adjourn, is there a second?
I would
We're
second.
out of
Wait,
business.
I
Yes.
I have a comment for the city councilor. Sir, I live up on Juniper Street, and I know there was a very distraught neighbor that I believe addressed the council, the city councilors, and I wanted to say that since I've been involved with the project, I have nothing but good to say about that company that's been running that project, and the supervisor, I don't know his last name, his first name is Mike, we're on a first-name basis, I'm out there every day talking to him, but they've been absolutely excellent to work with. Every concern I have, they've addressed it or taken the appropriate actions for my driveway accesses and things like that, so.
And I just received an email while I was here from Amanda and the mayor and I can't believe the other individual that went out with him, and then she came, made her presentation at the council meeting, and then they deliberated about this, and apparently today the finding is that they really can't make an allowance. They'll be setting a precedent that could be, used by other people when we put in sidewalks somewhere else. So,
I had noticed that today the company had trimmed back into her property quite heavily, and I told Mike, I said, you better get out of here before she gets home. He said, well, she's aware it's going to happen, so,
They
okay.
said they were gonna have to take the limbs off at least 10 feet up for the sweeper to go by, and it's just gonna, totally make the tree look horrible, so it'd be unsightly after they get done with it.
All right, you guys are speaking Greek to me.
Yep.
We're adjourned.
Yeah, I do have to ask you guys something.
Oh, is that part?
No, it's not
Okay.
part of